What's going on, everybody? It's the day of Semifinal 2, which means it's time to make some predictions about who's going to be qualifying for Saturday's Grand Final. Now, Semifinal 1 was thought of as the more competitive one. There were a lot more favorites in there, and I think that was still true. But the thing about Semifinal 2 is that this one feels a lot more open. And now, having seen the rehearsals, I think that there are a lot of performances here that are really visually strong. And even if they're not, let's say, the best vocal performances, or even if the songs are not the most engaging, there's a lot for the audience to connect to on a visual level, and it makes it a lot harder, I would say. So let's try and dive into these and discuss some of the qualities of them, and then at the end we'll talk about which ones I think are qualifying. So we begin with Denmark, which is a very slickly produced pop track. They've also gone visually with something that's consistent with Riley's branding, having these like solid pastel colors with a few shapes, and the song's called Breaking My Heart, so there's lots of hearts, as you would expect. One of the criticisms from the beginning when we've seen this song performed in different settings has been Riley's vocals, and while I would say that they're not like really, really bad, it does seem that now that we're here, not that much has changed. And whether or not that will really compromise the song, if there's something to compromise the song, I think it would be that. And maybe the fact that, at the end, it is quite repetitive and there isn't as much of an arc, at least vocally speaking. So this is certainly one that could just make it through. I'm leaning much more towards a non-qualification for this, but it's definitely not lost. We then move on to Armenia, which is in this alleged death spot. But it seems like a lot of people are very confident that this will qualify. And I have to say, after seeing the rehearsals, this looks spectacular. The way that they have positioned everything, having her on a slanted platform, using projections, on the B stage, I'm pretty sure, because it's quite a bit forward. It all just looks very, very unique. The combination of elements just feels new for Eurovision, even though separately these things have been done before. But it is really impressive. And vocally, in contrast to Riley, she has so much texture. She can be very delicate at times. She just is very captivating with how she performs. And so I think that if there's any song that could qualify from the death spot, it's definitely this one. We follow that with Romania, which is one that not a lot of people have had confidence in. And much like I've said in the past, Theodore is very clearly a talented guy. He's got a great voice, and you can tell that he has musical interests that are not specific to modern pop. He's very much like a classic songwriting guy. What needed to save this performance was some cleaned up visuals, because what we saw in the national selection was pretty messy. And this, while is definitely an improvement, kind of has the same issue where it's just so many things put together and none of it has any cohesiveness. And it's a shame because they did put the effort into revamping the song. It starts in a completely different way, and you might know this if you've heard the instrumental track. It's an acoustic opening, and then it changes up to where you get the beat and the full instrumentation. And that could have been an opportunity to make everything minimal, but that didn't happen. So unfortunately, I don't think this one is going through. I think that this could be potentially the one that is fighting the most uphill battle given its placement in the running order and all of the other elements that are working against it within the actual performance. We then move on to Estonia, which is a very big vocal performance, looks very elegant overall, and one that I guess people have kind of gone back and forth between, because it's early in the running order, because it's a ballad, which is, typically not what the televote loves, and there aren't any juries to save this. I don't want to harp on this too much, but certainly if this were a voting system that we used to have, we would not have to worry about this at all. This would be flying through, but unfortunately that's not the case. Because it really is like the only ballad of this style this year, and because it's performed so impeccably, I am still leaning more towards qualifying than not qualifying. But whether or not it's enough entertainment value for the audience, I guess we'll have to see. It is really going to have to be them responding to her voice and her presence in order for it to really get through. We then move on to Belgium, which is really like the first bop that we have in the semifinal. And this is going to wake people up without a doubt. They've also cleaned things up quite a lot from the national selection performance, and they have really leaned into that 90s Eurodance music video aesthetic, which was the thing that I was hoping to see, and I'm very glad that they've done that. I still do think that it lacks a bit of movement, and I know that we weren't going to be expecting like full-on choreo from Gustav and his singers, but even with the camera movements and camera shots, I feel like they could have picked it up a little bit more. but I don't think that's going to make a difference for qualifying. I think this is one of the songs that has the best chances at qualifying, and I think people are going to really enjoy it. After that, we have Cyprus, a pop ballad with a fairly strong vocal performance, and this is one that definitely looks very clean. They've really nailed the lighting on this. Lots of color and texture using shadows, something that I'm a real big fan of. And there's a lot of focus kept on him. There aren't too many other things that are on stage to add as like focal points. And that I think is going to be the deciding factor in like how much people like this, because I think for some people, you know, he's a very attractive guy. He's got a great voice, and that will be enough. The song is also quite catchy, I have to say. But for other people, it might not be as dynamic as they want, and they might gravitate towards some other things. But nonetheless, I think that it's a very strong effort overall, and I'm seeing this in the final more than I'm not. After that, we have Iceland, which definitely has another boost of energy, and it might be providing the dynamics that those people who are missing it in Cyprus's performance are looking for. I'm also a big fan of how this looks. I'm a real big fan of the combination of green and purple with an overall dark kind of landscape, and Dilia really is giving it everything that she's got. She might be improvising vocally more than is necessary, but I've always found it quite endearing how she is on stage. The one downside is that when combined with the camera work and the blocking, it does seem a little bit unfocused at times. For the most part, it is focused, but there's certain moments where it doesn't come through quite as much, and she actually like has her back to the camera more than I think is beneficial. And it seems like not a lot of people have faith in this, which I think is unfortunate, because I think this is one of the best songs that we have this year, and it's definitely giving a lot more than some of the other songs in this semifinal that might make it through off of like diaspora or neighborly voting, despite not being at this level. We follow that with Greece, which is one of the most interesting songs of the year, I would say. I was very curious to see how they were going to stage this. I can't say that I like it. I think that there were some interesting ideas there, but those of you who have seen like the clips and everything have seen how they've kind of plastered Victor all over the place on the LEDs, and in some moments it's actually okay, but it's a bit too much, and they could have done something really cool with this color scheme. I think I'm not a really big fan of how he's dressed completely in tan, but there was something there, and I just don't think that it's coming through. And also from a vocal point of view, Victor has been struggling in certain moments, and when he's on stage, he kind of bounces around, and in some moments it's looked pretty awkward. With the crowd, it actually seemed a little bit better, so it might not be a done deal for him, though I would say that if this were a semifinal with juries, that would probably be an area where he would suffer, because just vocally it's not there. After that, we have Poland, which is an entry that comes with a lot of baggage this year, so I'm going to put that to the side and talk about what I think are the appealing aspects of it. As far as the performance goes, like, this isn't great, but at least I can say that the choreography is pretty tight for the most part. It definitely is one of the best aspects of this performance. And as a song, it's pretty like easy on the ears and inoffensive, and it's like one of the few bops that we've had up until this point. But much like last year with Poland, there's a lot of overcompensating using filters, transitions. There's this one pink smoke transition that they use like 4 times, and it's just like too much. So enough about that. Let's move on to something that I think is really great, and that's literally the only thing that I wrote down in my notes about Slovenia. What a performance. This, I think, is going to be the semifinal winner, and we'll get to the song that a lot of people think is going to be the semifinal winner in a little bit, but this one to me is the full package. They're giving it everything on stage. There is a bit of a Maneskin vibe in there, but I think in a good way, because as a song, it's nothing like Zitia Boni, but there's something about the way that they've orchestrated themselves on stage that is dynamic. It's that level of dynamic, and it's just really entertaining to watch. I've said before that I think this could be Slovenia's best result ever, and now that I've seen it, I am very confident that it will be, and I'm very curious to see how far this could go in the final. After that, we have Georgia, which is one of the performances this year where all of the visual elements just come together in such a unique way. I especially love how they've taken the 2 sections of the LED walls and positioned her in between them, moved them forward from the rest of them, and made the whole thing very atmospheric. The one drawback or concern would be that in the first rehearsal yesterday, she was a bit pitchy, not like significantly, but you could certainly tell in certain moments that she wasn't getting the notes all the way there. But again, there are no juries here, and it's still it's still a memorable vocal performance, so it might not make a difference. We then have San Marino, which is not an entry that a lot of people have had confidence in, but it does seem like people have come around to liking the song, and I am happy for that because it is a good song, maybe just not like the best or the one that could take the most opportunities out of Eurovision. From a visual point of view, they are giving us quite a lot. I think especially towards the end, they really elevate things so that it becomes a full-on like arena rock experience. It does pale in comparison to Slovenia, unfortunately, but at the very least, they're giving it all they got, and if this were to make it through, I'd be pretty happy. And then there's Austria, which is the song that a lot of people love, huge fan favorite, and there are really high expectations about it. As far as how it lives up to those expectations, I think that some people are going to be a bit disappointed. How it is visually works, I have to say, but it's not the level of quirky that the song has. It definitely has a quirkiness to it, but it's not all the way there. I think that this will still benefit from the energy of the crowd, and you don't have to have heard the song before to sing po po po. Like, people are just going to pick up on that and join in. So it could still be really fun, and they could still get a good result, but I do have my doubts that this would be a semifinal winner, and when it comes to the grand final, I'm thinking might miss out on top 10 as well. Next, we have Albania, a very rare opportunity at Eurovision where we see an entire family on stage, and one that was definitely in need of some direction, some really solid direction, and I have to say that they found it. And I do think that people will respond to this. I'm leaning more towards a non-qualifier than a qualifier, but I still think that they found the right approach to get that feeling of togetherness that's in the song to come through in an authentic way and in a way that looks like visually clean. As we come closer to the final song of the show, we have Lithuania, which I feel comes at the perfect time just for the kind of song that it is, how it looks, how it feels, and it's performed impeccably. To me, it just feels like a nice warm hug, and I really like that about it. I feel pretty confident about this going through to the final, given, its spot in the running order and just how well done it is overall. And finally, we end things with Australia, Voyager and their blend of metal and guitars, a band that has worked their collective asses off to make it to Eurovision for many, many years, and now they're here. As expected, they come alive on stage, and I think that they're going to really feed off of the energy of the crowd. I felt like there could have been a bit more energy from the camera work, and it could be simply that I was comparing it to like Dreamer from last year in Australia Decides, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to really matter when it comes to their qualification. Yes, there is something to be said about Australia and the televote, but I still think that they're giving enough for Europe to really like. And so those are the general thoughts of all of the semi-finalists, and now we have to choose. Again, it just feels like there's so many reasons for many songs to be in or out of the final. And for this, I'm going to approach this a little bit differently from the last video. I'm going to give you most of my non-qualifiers, then most of my qualifiers, and then fill in the blanks and give my reasons why. So 4 non-qualifiers for you: Denmark, Romania, San Marino, and Albania. And then here are 9 qualifiers: Armenia, Estonia, Belgium, Cyprus, Slovenia, Georgia, Austria, Lithuania, and Australia. So the countries in limbo right now are Greece, Poland, and Iceland. And the reason why I've decided to do things this way is because I feel like 2 of these songs should not qualify. But because it's televote, I think that they're going to benefit from certain factors. While I really like Greece as a song, I would say that the performance isn't doing enough to justify its place in the final. But people have pointed out certain things that Greece benefits from, like being in the same semifinal as Cyprus. They usually get 12 points. There's also the fact that Victor has Danish roots, so it is expected that he's going to get points from Denmark. Maybe not top marks from Denmark, but yeah. And none of that has anything to do with what's actually happening. And then with Poland, the reason why I think it shouldn't qualify is because it's not the best of anything. And I feel like with most of the other songs, even some of the non-qualifiers, I think that they're all doing something better than what Poland is doing, where everything is either average or overcompensating or, just not worthy. So for that reason, for the purposes of this video, I'm going to put Greece and Poland as non-qualifiers because that's how I believe it should be based on assessing the performances. Therefore, I'm putting Iceland as a qualifier because I think they deserve it from an execution point of view, because they are doing a much better job than these other 2 countries that tend to benefit from neighbors, diaspora, and all that. Let me know in the comments what you think about this list. Do you agree with this set of qualifiers? Again, I think that this semifinal is super open, and I'm expecting that there's going to be a lot more disagreement disagreement here than there was with the first semifinal, but I'd love to know what you have to say. And if you haven't done so already, I would love if you subscribe to the channel so that we can keep talking about Eurovision, because it's here, it's happening, it's in the moment, it's exciting, and I want to know what you have to say about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you after semifinal 2. Take care.